The Soul Redeemer, Chapter 8E, Inside My Mind. Back to the healing room. It was becoming second nature for Nicole to move back and forth between the two realities, to live in them simultaneously. This time, she was not afraid to follow Jesus through the tabernacle into the healing room, but she admitted that she was a little nervous about what would happen there. She looked around once again in awe of the presence of the Lord and the worship that permeated this place. All of a sudden, her eyes grew big and her heart began to pound. Jesus stepped up beside her and took a hold of her arm. "It's my mother, isn't it?" she whispered. Jesus silently nodded. Conflicting emotions began coursing through her heart. Nicole knew in that moment what she needed to do. Jesus had brought her back to this room because even though she had been learning the lessons, she had been avoiding the biggest pain of the past, the pain of betrayal, rejection, and abandonment by the one who should have loved her most and done all to protect her. It was time to surrender her bitterness. Seeing her mother laying motionlessly on a little bed with a very bright angel singing over her did strange things to Nicole's heart, as well as little Nicky's. The hard shell of bitterness began to melt away, and she began to feel compassion for her. Little Nicky realized that she was relieved to see that she was in a safe place too. She remembered that, no matter what her mother had done, she loved her, and she had worked hard all her life to protect her from anyone else ever finding out the truth. Jesus said, "Nicole, your mother belongs to me just as her father did before her." And then he seemed to grow and grow until he was as tall as the highest point in the ceiling. His voice seemed to boom within her. "She is mine, and I will let no one speak against her." And then he returned to his normal size, and little Nicky suddenly knew that Jesus was protecting her mother and that she didn't have to hold on to that job any longer. "Will she ever be well enough to leave this place, Jesus?" Nicole asked quietly. In answer to this question, Jesus asked one of her, "Nicole, do you believe that I love your mother?" As she pondered this question, she watched the beautiful shining one sitting beside her mother as she tenderly reached down to brush a stray hair out of her eyes, then lovingly touched her cheek before picking up a golden book sitting nearby. As the angel began to read words of truth to her mother, Nicole knew the answer. "Yes, Jesus, I do believe that you love her." Jesus asked Nicole another very strange question. "Do you remember Isaac in the Bible? What was it that he accomplished in his life?" Nicole responded she couldn't think of anything other than that he was the father of Jacob and Esau. Jesus smiled and said, "Nicole, his job was to be the carrier of the one who would become the father of Israel, Jacob. He may not have seemed to accomplish much in your eyes, but he was faithful to me, and he passed on the godly seed to his son. Your mother carried you and passed down the godly seed in your family line to you. She is not perfect, but she is mine, and she has accomplished her job, and I will redeem the things that are out of place in my kingdom." Then he asked a third question. "Will you entrust your mother to me and not worry about whether she stays or goes?" Nicole knew what he was asking of her. She had been thinking that no one would believe the things that she had been through, and that if her mother would acknowledge the truth, she would be vindicated. Jesus was gently reminding her that neither justification nor gaining understanding from others was important. Could she accept that? Once again the cross seemed to call out to Nicole, and once again she knelt down beside it and answered Jesus' question as honestly as she was able to in that moment. "Jesus, I trust you and will choose to leave my mother in your care. I choose to surrender my will and my past to your care as well, and if my mother is never able to make any of it better, I'll accept that. Please forgive me for all the anger, bitterness, and unforgiveness I've been holding on to. I do choose to forgive my mother. I understand now that she is sick and wounded, maybe more so than I was. I am thankful that you are caring for her, and I do want what's best for her. You are the only one who will know if and when she can handle the truth and deal with her own past. I choose to believe that you will redeem all the bad things in my life and that you'll guide and direct my future." Then Jesus knelt down beside her and asked, "Little Nicky, do you trust me?" Little Nicky knew exactly what he meant. She took a deep breath and looked into the loving eyes of her father and said, "Yes, I do. I choose to forgive Mother too. From now on, I will trust you to protect me." Jesus then reached into little Nicky's head and said, "For the word of God is living and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the division of soul and spirit, and of joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart." Hebrews 4:12. As Jesus spoke the last word, she was suddenly transported to a room that was full of boxes stacked floor to ceiling on shelves. Somehow Nicole knew that the boxes held parts of her life. Just when she had thought that things would get better, they got worse. At least it felt worse. On the floor was a box with a girl standing inside of it. As Nicole looked at her, the girl stepped out of the box and began to grow in size until she was as big as Nicole. She was dressed all in black, and she wore a black leather jacket. She looked to be about 17 years old, and on one hand she wore brass knuckles, and the other hand she carried a switchblade. Through eyes that were hardened with anger and hatred, she looked around and asked, "What is this place? A new kind of prison?"